Okay, now we'll come to the next class. That here, in the previous class, I told that the diary entry that actually Annie has started on Saturday, 20th June 1942, and actually we know that Annie considered the diary as her dearest friend with whom he could share everything. So here also she is actually addressing her diary as Kitty. Here, dearest Kitty. Our entire class is quaking in its boots. Now, actually, Annie is giving the description of the new school where she was admitted. Okay, that our new class is quaking in its boots. Quaking means making sounds. She is telling the new class we're making sounds all through boots. The reason, of course, is the forthcoming meeting in which the teachers decide who will move up to the next form and who will be kept back. Here, form means class. So every students of that class, and he was telling that they were in great, tense. They were very much anxious that who are going to up in the next class, because teacher will decide. They will have a meeting and they will decide that who will go to the next form, means next class, and which student will be kept back in the same class. Half the class is making bets. GN and I laugh ourselves silly at the two boys behind us, CN and Jacques, who have staked their entire holiday savings on their bet. Now, students who are betting there that who are going to pass in the next class and who are actually going to be stayed back. So here Annie told that half is the class making bets. The GN, actually probably Annie's friend and I, so Annie, GN and Annie, they had actually laughed ourselves silly at the two boys because they were laughing at what the two boys had done. The two boys here, namely CN and Jacques, actually they had used all their money on the stake, on bet, that whoever will go to the next class or not, and they have actually invested all their savings, holiday savings, in that betting. From morning to night, it's, you are going to pass? No, I am not. Yes, you are. No, I am not. Everybody was discussing about, hey, you are going to pass. Somebody is telling, no, I am not. Then somebody is encouraging him or her, no, you are going to pass, and something like this. Even G's pleading glances and my angry outbursts can calm them down. Actually, G's and G, probably here Annie's friend and Annie, actually they do not like these, the betting. All the students, they were doing, all of their friends, but what they were doing, they are betting. Okay, that whoever going to pass in the exam, who are not. So actually, very angrily, Annie was looking at them. But here they did not calm down. Now, if you ask me, there are so many dummies that about a quarter of the class should be kept back. But teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth. That here, Annie told that yes, if you ask me, actually she is writing that there are some few dummies there. Here, dummies means here replica, but here some blockheaded. Some blockheaded students, and according to Annie, that they actually they are to be kept back in the class. If Annie is telling that they are to be kept in the class, okay, they are to be kept in the class, but still she is telling the teachers are the most unpredictable creation on earth. I don't know whether you agree with this or not. That according to Annie, teachers are the most unpredictable creature, because Annie is telling that we cannot predict our teacher, that we cannot, because there will be a meeting, and in that meeting that decision will be taken that who will go to the next form, who will go to the next class. So Annie is telling that the teachers are the most unpredictable. I'm not so worried about my girlfriends and myself. She is having good friends, near friends, and he is telling that the girls who were actually her friends, and he is telling that she was not so much worried about it. Well, we will make it. We will make it means Annie was very much confident that they will obviously will be lifted, or will be uplifted to the next class. They will go to the next form. The only subject I am not sure about, it's maths. Maths is that subject, it's really a very difficult. I feel it may not be to you, but most of the people find that maths probably the most difficult subject. So It was no exception with Annie also. Annie found that maths is the subject that with which she might have a problem. Anyway, all we can do is wait. Until then, we keep telling each other not to lose heart, and she is telling, yes, for this I will have to actually wait. Everybody will have to wait. Everybody will have to wait, because we don't know that what would be the result, because the teacher will decide and they will announce that who are going to the next class or not. I get along pretty well with all my teachers, and he is telling that I am having a very warm relationship with all my teachers. There are 9 of them, and in that school 9 teachers are there, 7 men and 2 women. So 7 teachers, 2 madams. Mr. Casing, the old fogey who teaches math, was annoyed with me for ages because I talked so much. Here, old fogey means an old-fashioned person. Now Annie is telling, and actually Annie is trying to tell about Mr. Casing, the math teacher, and Annie told that math teacher is always displeased with her because as she talks very much in the class. So after several warnings, he assigned me extra homework. Now in that maths class, Annie actually used to talk a lot, and Mr. Casing was very much dissatisfied with Annie, with this behavior of Annie. So actually Mr. Casing had assigned extra homework with Annie, an essay on the subject, a chatterbox. You see, being a math teacher, he is giving the punishment in the form of homework that Mr. Casing had given Annie to write an essay on a chatterbox, because actually Annie talks very much during the class. A chatterbox, what can you write about that? So Annie was confused. A chatterbox, what should be an essay like this? What I should write on it? I would worry about that later, I decided. So whenever he got this, actually he received this homework, at first she decided, okay, I will think about later, let me go home, then I will think. I jotted down the title in my notebook, tucked it in my bag, and tried to keep quiet. So she had taken this, she had written the homework as she would have to write these homework as a chatterbox, and at present she was not thinking about, but she thought, okay, let me go home. At first she has tucked it in his bag. She had kept this notebook in her bag. That evening, after I had finished my rest of my homework, the note about the essay caught my eye. Then that evening, when on that day in the school, Mr. Casing had given her the homework. So that evening, after doing all her homework at home, Annie actually now saw that the homework there. I began thinking about the subject while chewing the tip of my fountain pen. That she was just chewing the tip of the pen like this, and he was thinking. She was thinking what to write about chatterbox. Anyone could ramble on the big space between the words, but the trick was to come up with convincing arguments to prove the necessity of talking. So 2 ideas came in Annie's mind. At first, she is telling that rambling on means to talk or to write aimlessly for long. Now Annie thought that I could write irrelevant words, I could give lots of gap in between words, and this will help her to write 3 or 4 pages, and that would be relevant, and I would submit it as my homework. On the other hand, Annie was thinking, no, she is not going to do that. She will try to make the teacher convinced that why the students need to talk in the class. This is interesting that she had decided that I should go with that second option, that I am not going to ramble, I am not going to write some relevant words, I am going to convince Mr. Casing, the maths teacher, that why we should talk in the class. I thought, and suddenly I had an idea. So Annie was thinking of this topic, that I am going to convince the teacher why we should talk in the class, and now she had an idea. I wrote the 3 pages Mr. Casing had assigned me and was satisfied. So afterwards, with that view to convince Mr. Casing, Annie actually had written 3 pages and she was satisfied. I argued that talking is a student's trait and that I would do my best to keep it under control, but that I would never be able to cure myself of the habit since my mother talked so much as I did, if not more, and that there is not much you can do about inherited traits. Very funny. Actually, Annie had written that talking in the class is student's trait. Traits means characteristics. And she had told that yes, I would try my best that to keep it under control. But in the same time, she told that I cannot cure myself of this habit because this is an inherited characteristics. Why? Because she had written that her mother talks more, probably more than Annie did, and as she has inherited from her mother these characteristics, so how could I cure an inherited characteristics or inherited traits? So here you can understand what the teacher will tell about, that if it is inherited traits, if Annie had got it from her mother, then how she could cure of these. Mr. Casing had a good laugh at my arguments, but when I proceeded to talk my way to the next lesson, he assigned me a second essay. So Mr. Casing actually had taken it in a simple way and she laughed a lot, but actually she was not totally convinced. In the next class of Mr. Casing, when Annie started to talk again, because Annie thought that the teacher was convinced and he would not tell anything to her, but again actually Mr. Casing was not satisfied, and second time she had given another essay as punishment to Annie. This time it was supposed to be on an incorrigible chatterbox. Incorrigible means here something that cannot be corrected. Now second time Annie was assigned with this homework, an incorrigible chatterbox. First it was only chatterbox, second an incorrigible chatterbox. I handed it in and Mr. Casing had nothing to complain about for 2 whole lessons. Now again Annie actually had written these, an incorrigible chatterbox, had given to Mr. Casing, and for next 2 classes of Mr. Casing did not tell anything to Annie. However, during the 3rd lesson, I had finally had enough. I had finally had enough. In the next class, she is telling that in the 3rd class, actually she had enough. Annie Frank, as punishment for the talking in the class, write an essay entitled "Quack, Quack, Quack," said Mistress Chatterbox. Now, first it was on Chatterbox. Annie was satisfied in clarifying her standpoint, and she had actually submitted to the teacher, Mr. Casing, and Mr. Casing laughed. Afterwards, after 2 class, actually again Mr. Casing had given another essay to write on, and that this time the title was an incorrigible chatterbox. Afterwards, again for 2 weeks after submission of this essay, after 2 weeks, okay, Mr. Casing did not say anything to Annie, but Annie actually kept on talking in the class, and afterwards again Annie was assigned with this peculiar type of essay, and the title of the essay was "Quack, Quack, Quack," said Mistress Chatterbox. Quack, is a cry, is a call of duck. So here Annie, as if she kept on chatting in that class, kept on talking continuously in the class. So Mr. Casing had assigned this "Quack, Quack, Quack," said Mistress Chatterbox. The class roared, the class all laughed. That's how funny the title of this essay was. I had to laugh too. Thought I had nearly exhausted my ingenuity on the topic of chatterbox. Ingenuity means originality, and inventiveness. Actually, why not? Because on the same topic, first it was chatterbox, next it was incorrigible chatterbox, next it was quack 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 said mistress chatterbox. The basic of this essay was chatterbox. So Annie was told that she had finished all these innovativeness she had, originality she had about chatterbox, because she had already submitted 2 essays written on chatterbox. So this is the 3rd essay on the same topic, that is chatterbox. So the title was different, but the basic was the same, that is chatterbox. So what she would write on the same topic? It was time to come up with something else, something original. So she is thinking, how how encourages the girl was. She was not thinking negatively. She was always positive. She actually started to think, okay, let us try something original. My friend Sani, who is good at poetry, offered to help me write the essay from beginning to end in verse, and I jumped for joy. Now, in that time when Annie was thinking what to write, because I have already written 2 essays on the same topic, this is the 3rd one, so what I should write, because I have already exhausted, finished all this originality, all this idea I heard about chatterbox. Then Annie's friend, and her name is Sani, my friend Sani, actually was good at poetry. Actually, Sani could write good poems. So she actually offered her that she would help Annie to write this essay in verse, means in a form of a poem from the beginning. Mr. Casing was trying to play a joke on me with this ridiculous subject, but I would make sure the joke was on him. How daring the student was. The student realized, means Annie realized, that Mr. Casing was trying to make a subject, make a joke on her. Actually, Mr. Casing was trying to make her a subject of joke. So actually she had taken it as a challenge, and she would write in such a way the essay for the 3rd time that Mr. Casing would be the subject of joke in that class, in that time. I finished my poem and it was beautiful. Actually, her friend helped her in writing this, and Annie found it was beautiful. It was about a mother duck and a father swan with 3 baby ducklings who were beaten to death by the father because they quacked too much. Just try to understand the point what she has written. Annie had written the theme of this poem, that quack 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 said Mistress Chatterbox, that she had actually, as if she had stated a story in that in the verse form, in the poem, that there was 3 ducklings, 3 baby ducks, and mother and father swan. Okay, mother duck and father swan, and actually the baby ducks usually used to quack 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 every time, and the father was very much annoyed, very much dissatisfied with this, and the father had beaten these baby ducks, and the baby ducks died. Luckily, Mr. Casing took the joke the right way. Actually, here Annie indirectly wanted to mean Mr. Casing as the father duck, as a swan, that who had actually killed the ducklings because of talking. Now he read the poem to the class. Now Mr. Casing actually had taken it on a lighter note, and she had actually read the poem in the class, adding his own comments, and she actually had made few comments, and to several other classes as well. And not only in that class, Mr. Casing had told this to other classes also, that in that class actually somebody had written a poem like this. Since then, I have been allowed to talk and haven't been assigned any extra homework. Now, Mr. Casing was very much convinced that what the girl wanted to say, and since then, whenever Annie used to talk in that class, she was not forbidden. On the contrary, Mr. Casing's always making jokes on these days, and Mr. Casing used to make jokes with this. Actually, as Mr. Casing used to dislike Annie beforehand, but after writing this submission of these 3 essays, Mr. Casing actually the bonding between Mr. Casing and Annie became more warm, and Mr. Casing did not tell anything. Yours, Annie. And this is the end of this diary writing, extracted from the diary of a young girl with slight adaptation. So this is the end of this chapter, that we had completed it. Here is few questions. Just I would like to write these questions. That why was Mr. Casing annoyed with Annie? What did he ask her to do? The answer you will get from this text. How did Annie justify her being a chatterbox in her essay? This is a very good, that how she had actually justified, clarified her standpoint. Do you think Mr. Kessing was a strict teacher? This will depend on you, that how you will write the answer. What made Mr. Kessing allow Annie to talk in the class, and ultimately why Mr. Kessing actually allowed Annie to talk in the class? After this, if you have any queries, ask me question using your ID and password. After this, goodbye.